In the dense forest, where the sacred Namasha tree stood tall, a group of sages had gathered to complete their 12-year-long sacrifice. Among them was Sonika, known as Kilapatai, who had invited many wise men to join him in the sacred ritual. As they sat in contemplative silence, surrounded by the gentle rustling of leaves and the soft chirping of birds, a young man named Abresarava, a son of Lomharshana, arrived at their hermitage. Abresarava, or Satai as he was also known, had heard of the sage's great sacrifice and had come to pay his respects. He was a master storyteller, well versed in the Puranas, and had traveled far and wide, sharing tales of ancient heroes and gods. As he approached the gathering, he bowed low, his joined palms a sign of respect for these revered men. The sages, recognizing Sata's humility and knowledge, welcomed him warmly. They asked him about his travels and where he had spent his time, and Satai began to share tales of his journeys. He spoke of the great Krishna Dvaipayana, who had composed the epic Mahabharata, and how it was recited by Vesampayana at the snake sacrifice of King Janimjaya. Satai's words were like a gentle breeze on a summer day, carrying with them the wisdom of ancient times. He spoke of the battle between the Kuras and Pandus, and how he had come to pay his respects to these wise men. The sages listened intently, their eyes shining with curiosity, as Satai asked if they would like to hear the stories of the Puranas, and of the sages replied that they were particularly interested in hearing the Bharata, a sacred work composed by Vesa, which contained the history of the world and the deeds of great heroes. They had heard it recited by Vesampayana at the snake sacrifice of King Janimjaya, but wanted to hear more. Satai smiled, his eyes sparkling with excitement. He began to speak of the creation myth, of how the universe was born from a mighty egg, and how Brahma, the Eternal One, emerged as the primal cause of all creation. From this egg came the Prajapatis, the gods and goddesses, and the first humans. As Satai spoke, the forest seemed to come alive around them. The trees swayed gently in the breeze, and the birds sang sweet melodies. The sages listened with rapt attention, their minds expanding with wonder as they heard of the ancient heroes and gods who had shaped the world. And so Satai continued his tale, speaking of the generations that followed, of how the universe was born, grew, and eventually came to an end, only to be reborn again. In a gathering of wise rishis, one of them asked Satai, the son of Sutta, to recount the tale of Samanta, a sacred region revered by many. Satai began his narrative with the story of Rama, the great warrior who had annihilated the Kshatriya tribe in Anger. As he recounted, the scene unfolded like a vivid painting. Rama stood amidst the lakes of blood formed from the slaughter of the Kshatriyas. His forefathers, including Rikaka, appeared before him and praised his reverence for their ancestors and his bravery. They offered Rama a boon, asking what it was that he desired most. With humility, Rama requested forgiveness for the sins committed in Anger, and asked that the lakes become famous as holy shrines. The pictures granted his wish, assuring Rama that he would be absolved from his guilt. As they spoke, the region surrounding the lakes became known as Samanta. The wise men declared that every country should bear a name significant of some circumstance that had rendered it famous, and so the story of Samanta began to spread. Years passed, and the region was once again witness to great events. In the interval between the Dwapara and Kali Yugas, the armies of the Kauravas and Pandavas clashed in a fierce battle at Samanta. 18 Ekshahenas of soldiers assembled on that sacred land, eager for combat. Satai explained to the rishis how an Ekshahena was composed. 1 chariot, 1 elephant, 5-foot soldiers, and 3 horses formed a patai. 3 patas made a Sanomukha, and so on. The battle raged for 10 days, with Bhishma fighting valiantly, followed by Drona, Karnaselya, and others. The encounter between Duryodhana and Bhima was particularly fierce, with the two warriors exchanging blows in a spectacular display of martial prowess. And yet, as suddenly as it had begun, the battle, into the rishis listened intently to Satai's account, their minds filled with wonder at the tale of Samanta. They asked him to explain the term Vichalhena and how it was composed, and Satai obliged, revealing the intricate calculations that defined this ancient unit of measurement. As the story unfolded, the rishis were drawn into a world of epic proportions, a world where gods and mortals walked side by side, where heroes fought for honor and glory. They listened in awe as Satai described the various Parva sections of the Bharata, that great history that had been passed down through generations. The first Parva was Anakramanaka, followed by Sangraha Posh. In the scorching plains of Kurukshetra, A grand sacrifice was underway, led by Janimjaya, the son of Parashit. His brothers, Srutasna, Agresna, and Damesna, were all present at the ritual, but their attention turned to a young creature who had wandered into the midst of the gathering. The little one was an offspring of Sarama, the celestial bitch, and he was being chased by Janimjaya's brothers. The child cried out in pain as he fled towards his mother, who soon arrived on the scene. Sarama questioned her son about the source of his distress, and the young one explained that he had been beaten by Janimjaya's brothers without any fault of his own. The mother was outraged and demanded to know why her child had been mistreated. Sarama marched towards Janimjaya and his brothers, who stood silent under her fiery gaze. She cursed them, saying that evil would befall them. When they least expected it, the king's brothers were visibly shaken by the encounter with Sarama. Janimjaya, realizing the gravity of the situation, became deeply troubled. He knew he had to find a way to appease Sarama and lift the curse. After completing his sacrifice, he set out on a journey to search for a Purata who could procure absolution for him. As Janimjaya roamed through his dominions, he came across a hermitage where a renowned rishi named Sudasrava dwelled with his son Samasrava. The young man was deeply devoted to ascetic practices and possessed the full force of his father's asceticism. Janimjaya approached the rishi and requested that Samasrava become his Gurahata. Samasrava warned Janimjaya that he could absolve him from all offenses except those committed against Mahadeva. He had one peculiar habit: he would grant any Brahmana who asked anything of him. Janimjaya agreed to accept this peculiarity and appointed Samasrava as his Purata. Meanwhile, in another part of the kingdom, a rishi named Aladhamya was training 3 disciples, Arunai, Upamanu, and Vida. Dhamya ordered Arunai to stop up a breach in the water course of a field, but Arunai soon realized that he couldn't do it by ordinary means. Undeterred, Arunai came up with an unorthodox solution. He lay down in the breach himself, allowing the water to be confined. Aladhamya discovered his disciples changing his plan and was impressed by Arunai's devotion. He renamed Arunai Udalik as a mark of his favor and foretold that all the Vedas and Dharma Sastras would shine within him as Swarupamani. In the sacred 4th of Namisha, a gathering of wise men assembled to perform a grand ritual. Among them was Agresrava Sotai, the son of Lomaharshana, expert in the ancient tales known as the Puranas. As he stood before the revered rishis, his eyes sparkled with eagerness to share the stories that dwelled within him. The air was thick with anticipation, and the scent of sandalwood wafted through the trees, carrying the whispers of the past. Sotai had spent years studying the Puranas with utmost devotion, poring over their pages like a thirsty soul drinking from an endless well. His knowledge was vast, his memory unwavering, and his passion for storytelling infectious. As he raised his joined hands in reverence, he asked the rishis to guide him. I have told you the tale of Utinka, which led to King Janimjaya's great sacrifice. What would you have me share next? What stories? He who wished to hear the holy men exchange knowing glances, their eyes aglow with a deep longing for the tales that Sadai held within him. They spoke in unison, their voices carrying on the breeze like the rustling of leaves. O son of Lomaharshana, we have a special request. Our revered master Sonika is attending to his duties. By the sacred fire, he possesses an unparalleled understanding of the divine stories that weave together the gods and Azurus men and serpents and Gan-Arvis. We must wait for him to return that he may guide you in sharing these wondrous tales. As they waited, Sotai nodded in agreement, his eyes never leaving the faces of the rishis. He knew that Sonika's presence was not just a formality. It was a guarantee that the story shared would be infused with the master's deep understanding and reverence for the ancient lore. Time passed like the gentle flow of a mountain stream, carrying the assembly through moments of quiet contemplation and anticipation. Finally, Sonika emerged from his duties. By the sacred fire, his face aglow with the warmth of devotion, he performed his rituals, propitiating the gods and manes with prayers and oblations of water. As he took his seat amidst the rishis and Sadhyas, a hush fell over the assembly. With Sadai seated before him, Sonika's eyes shone like the stars on a clear night, guiding the storyteller to begin. Now that our master has returned, let us proceed with the tales. I shall share stories of wonder and awe of heroes and villains, of gods and mortals. And so, with the assembly seated in rapt attention, Sada's words began to weave a tapestry of sound and image, transporting all present to realms both familiar and unknown. The sun had just begun to set over the forest, casting a warm orange glow over the gathering of sages and scholars. Sonek, a renowned sage, sat with his disciples, eager to hear the tales of old from Sotai. A young storyteller, Sonika's eyes sparkled with curiosity as he asked Sotai to recount The history of the Prairie Clan Sotai with a gentle smile began to weave a tale that would transport his listeners to a time long past. He spoke of Brahma, the creator god who had produced the great Saint Freyu from the sacred fire at Varuna's sacrifice. Freyu, in turn, had a son named Chavana, whom he loved dearly, and so the lineage continued with each generation, producing virtuous and wise individuals. As Sotai spoke of Chavana's son, from it Sonika's eyes lit up with interest. O son of Sutta, Sonika asked, why was the illustrious son of Freyu named Chavana? Sotai smiled, knowing that this question would lead him to a fascinating Tala's story, unfolded like a rich tapestry. As Sotai spoke of Pulma, Freyu's wife, who had been betrothed to the Rakshasa, but was subsequently given to Freyu by her father. The Rakshasa, consumed by lust and anger, seized Pulma, claiming that she was his rightful wife. He questioned Ignite, the god of fire, who hesitated, afraid to tell a falsehood or incur Freyu's curse. Ignite's words came slowly, like a gentle stream flowing through the forest. Pulma was indeed chosen by you, O Rakshasa, he said, but she was not taken with holy rites and invocations. She was bestowed on Freyu as a gift from her father with Vedic rites. In my presence, the god's words were like a balm to the listeners, soothing their minds and calming their hearts. As Sotai finished his tale, the gathering fell silent, lost in thought. Sonika's eyes shone with gratitude, while his disciples looked at each other with wonder. In that moment, they knew that they had been transported to a realm beyond time and space, where the wisdom of the ancients still lingered. In a distant land where the sun dipped into the horizon and painted the sky with hues of crimson and gold, a tale of love, loss, and transformation unfolded. It was a time when gods and mortals walked among each other, their stories intertwined like the threads of a rich tapestry. A lush forest, a beautiful woman named Palma, wife of the great sage Freyu, wandered with her infant son Chavana in her arms. The air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers and the gentle chirping of birds, but Palma's heart was heavy with grief, for she had just escaped from the clutches of a ferocious Rakshasa who had assumed the form of a boar and carried her away with incredible speed. As they walked, Chavana, sensing his mother's distress stirred within her womb, the infant's anger at the violence he had witnessed was palpable, and with a burst of energy he dropped from his mother's womb, shining like the sun. The Rakshasa, startled by this sudden movement, released his grip on Palma, fell to the ground, and was instantly consumed by flames. Palma, still reeling from her ordeal, picked up her infant son and continued their journey unbeknownst to them. They were being watched by Brahma, the grandfather of all, who had witnessed the entire scene unfold. His eyes filled with compassion, he approached Palma and comforted her, soothing her tears. Like a gentle rain, as she wept, the droplets of sorrow that fell from her eyes formed a mighty river, which began to follow in their footsteps. Brahma, witnessing this miracle, gave the river a name, Vatyusara, and it flowed gently past the hermitage of Chavana, now an ascetic, with great power. Freyu, upon returning home, found his wife and infant son. But his joy was short-lived. His rage at the Rakshasa's violence knew no bounds, and he demanded to know who had revealed Palma's identity to their attacker. Palma, still shaken, explained that it was Ignite, the god of fire, who had betrayed her trust. Fregu's anger boiled over, and in a fit of passion he cursed Ignite, saying, "Thou shalt eat of all things." The curse hung in the air like a dark cloud, casting a shadow on the tranquil landscape. And so the story of Palma, Parva, continued, weaving a tale of love, loss, and transformation that would be etched in the annals of time forever. In the realm of ancient lore, a tale unfolded like a sacred flame. Sotai, a wise sage, began to recount the story of Ignite, the god of fire, and his tumultuous encounter with the revered Rishi Fregus. The sun rose over the land. Freyu approached Ignite, who was busily attending to his duties at the sacrificial altar. The Rishi's eyes blazed with an inner fire as he confronted Ignite about a grave matter. "What folly is this, O Ignite?" Freyu thundered. "Why dost thou pretend to be impartial when thy heart is aflame with passion? Thou art the mouth of the gods, and the first to partake in the sacred offerings. How canst thou claim to eat from all things clean and unclean?" Like Ignite, taken aback by Fregu's words, retreated into contemplation. He pondered the Rishi's accusations, weighing his own actions against the truth. As he reflected, a profound realization dawned upon him. He was indeed the mouth of the gods, consuming the sacred. Butter poured upon his flames to appease both the Devas and Pitras. The two were not separate entities, but one in essence. The waters that quenched the thirst of all living beings. With this newfound understanding, Ignite withdrew himself from the sacrificial altars, leaving behind a trail of desolation. The Brahmanas, deprived of their sacred fire, were plunged into darkness and despair. Their rituals and ceremonies came to a standstill as the universe itself seemed to be torn apart. By the absence of the divine flame, the rishis in desperation sought the counsel of Brahma, the creator of the universe. They implored him to intervene on their behalf to restore balance to the cosmos and rekindle the sacred fire. Brahma, wise as the ages, summoned Ignite before him with gentle words. He addressed the god. Thou art a creator and destroyer of worlds, thou preservest all that exists. Why dost thou act foolishly, Ignite? Thou alone art pure in the universe, its very stay. I command thee to continue receiving thy own portion, and that of the gods offered at thee. Ignite, humbled by Brahma's words, pledged obedience to his will. He returned to his duties, once more consuming the sacred butter. At the mouth of the Devas and Pitras, the universe rejoiced as balance was restored, and the rishis resumed their ceremonies with renewed vigor. Thus, the tale of Ignite's curse came full circle, a testament to the eternal nature of the divine flame that burns within all living beings. As Sati concluded his recitation, the assembly listened in rapt attention, their hearts filled with wonder at the ancient history connected with Polamov and Shyavana's birth.
In a distant corner of the universe, a celestial dense girl named Menika had caught the eye of Viswavesu, the king of the Gan harvest. Their secret trysts resulted in an unexpected pregnancy, and when the time came, Menika gave birth to a beautiful infant girl on the banks of a river near the hermitage of the great Rishi Stilaksa. The newborn child was left abandoned by its mother, who had no qualms about leaving it to fend for itself. However, fate had other plans. The wise and compassionate Rishi Stilaksa discovered the infant girl lying on the river bank, and took her in, rearing her as one of his own. As she grew up, the child proved to be a paragon of virtue and beauty, surpassing all others in goodness and charm. Stilaksa named her Pramanvara, which meant one who is beautiful beyond measure. Years passed, and Pramanvara's fame spread far and wide. Ruru, the son of Pramatai, had heard tales of her exceptional qualities, and was smitten by love at first sight. He approached his father, Pramatai, with a request to ask Stilaksa for Pramanvara's hand in marriage. Pramatai agreed, and arrangements were made for Ruru and Pramanvara to be wed when the auspicious star Vardadeva ascended. But fate had other plans. Once again, on the eve of their wedding, Pramanvara was out playing with her friends near a river when she unknowingly trod upon a serpent that lay hidden in the grass. The reptile's venom coursed through her veins, and she collapsed to the ground lifeless. The news of Pramanvara's tragic fate spread like wildfire, and soon many notable Brahmanas, including Swastiatriya, Mahajana, and others, gathered around her motionless body. They wept and wailed, overcome with compassion for the young woman who had been so suddenly taken from them. Ruru, however, was consumed by grief beyond measure. He retreated from the scene, unable to bear the sight of his beloved Pramanvara lying lifeless before him. The assembly of Brahmanas remained around her body, mourning the loss of this beautiful and virtuous young woman who had left an indelible mark on their lives. As they sat in silence, surrounded by the beauty of nature, became clear that even death could not extinguish Pramanvara's radiance. Her beauty shone brighter than ever before, as if her spirit had transcended the physical realm. The gathering of Brahmanas was a testament to the profound impact she had on their lives, and the memory of Pramanvara would live on forever in their hearts.
In that dense forest, Ruru sat beside the lifeless body of his beloved Pramanvara, her delicate form lying bare on the ground. He was consumed by grief, his heart shattered into a million pieces. Tears streamed down his face as he poured out his sorrow in a lamentation that echoed through the trees. Of cruel fate, Ruru wailed. Why has my dear Pramanvara been taken from me? I have lived a virtuous life, performing good deeds and honoring my elders. As all this merit, and for naught can it not restore her to life? He spoke. A heavenly messenger appeared before him, its presence both calming and unsettling. The messenger's words cut through Ruru's despair like a knife. Ruru, your lamentations are in vain, the messenger said gently. Your beloved Pramanvara has lived out her days on this earth, but do not grieve, for the gods have provided a way to restore her to life. Ruru's eyes lit up with hope as he asked the messenger to reveal the secret of Pramanvara's resurrection. The celestial being explained that Ruru must offer half of his own life in exchange for his bride's return. I most willingly give my life For hers Ruru declared, his voice trembling with determination, "Let my beloved Pramadvara rise once more, restored to her former beauty and radiance a messenger." Then departed, leaving Ruru to ponder the weight of his decision. He knew that giving up half of his own life would shorten his time on earth, but he was willing to make this sacrifice for the love he shared with Pramadvaras. The news of Ruru's offer reached the god Dharma, the judge of the dead. He was approached by a delegation consisting of the messenger and Pramadvara's father, the king of Gandharvas. They begged Dharma to grant their request, allowing Pramadvara to rise from the dead with half of Ruru's life. Dharma, moved by their pleas, agreed to their proposal, and so Pramadvara, now imbued with a moiety of Ruru's life, rose from her somber radiant and whole once more. Their union was soon sanctified in a grand ceremony attended by their families and friends. As they began their new life together, Ruru made a vow to destroy the serpent race which had long plagued his people. With Pramadvara by his side, he ruined the lion, seeking out serpents to vanquish with his trusty staff. One day, as Ruru ventured into an extensive forest, he came face to face with an ancient Dandava serpent, its massive coils stretching across the ground. The beast, sensing Ruru's wrath, addressed him calmly, "I have done you no harm, Brahmana." The Dandava said,
In the scorching heat of the day, Ruru, a wise and powerful sage, sat beneath the shade of a tree, his eyes fixed on the serpent Dandava. The air was thick with tension as Satai, the narrator, recounted the tale to an enthralled audience. Ruru's wife, dear to him as life itself, had been bitten by a snake, and in his grief and anger he vowed to slay every serpent that crossed his path. His eyes blazed with determination as he spoke to Dandava, "You shall pay. For your Kent's treachery, I will not rest until you are dead." The words hung in the air like a challenge, and Satai paused, allowing the weight of Ruru's declaration to sink in. But Dandava was no ordinary serpent. It spoke with a voice that was both ancient and wise. "O Brahmana, the snakes that bite men are different from us. We are not the same as those serpents that bring death and destruction. I implore you, do not slay me under the mistaken notion that I am one of them." Ruru's gaze wavered, his anger tempered by Dandava's words. As Satai continued to narrate, it became clear that Ruru was torn between his desire for vengeance and his growing understanding of Dandava's plea. The serpent's words had struck a chord within him, and he saw the fear in its eyes, a fear that seemed almost human. Ruru's compassion got the better of him, and he chose not to slay. Dandava sage's hand reached out, and with gentle fingers he stroked the snake's head. "Tell me, O serpent, who are you truly?" he asked, his voice soft as a summer breeze. Dandava's eyes closed in relief as it began its tale of transformation. It had once been Sahasra, but a great Rishak cursed by a Brahmana for some unknown transgression. Ruru's curiosity was piqued, and he pressed Dandava for more information. "Tell me, O serpent, what was the curse that changed you, and how long will your form continue?" Thus the snake's voice trembled as it spoke of its former life and its present faith, a fate that hung in the balance like a delicate thread. As Satai finished his tale, the audience was left to ponder the complexities of Ruru's decision. Had he spared Dandava out of compassion, or had he seen something more? The line between right and wrong blurred as the serpent's words echoed through their minds, subject like other serpents to the same calamities, but not sharing their good fortune in woe the same, but in joy different. In the verdant glade, Satai, the venerable sage, continued to recount an ancient tale to the assembled gathering. His words wove a spell of enchantment as he spoke of his friend Kegama, a Devadaseti who possessed spiritual power through his rigorous austerities. Kegama was known for his impetuous nature and sharp tongue. Yet Satai's narrative revealed that beneath this gruff exterior lay a heart of gold. One day, while Kegama performed at an Hagnai Hutra, a sacred fire sacrifice, Satai, in a playful wood, fashioned a mock snake from blades of grass with mischievous intent. He attempted to startle his friend with the makeshift serpent. Kegama, however, was not one to be trifled with. He fell into a swoon at the sight of the mocked snake, and when he regained consciousness, his wrath was palpable. "Since you have made a powerless mock snake to frighten me," Kegama thundered, "you shall be turned even into a venomless serpent yourself by my curse." Satai's heart quickened as he realized the gravity of his friend's words. Bowing low with joined hands and an agitated heart, Satai implored Kegama to forgive him. He explained that his intention was merely to elicit laughter from his friend and begged for mercy. Moved by Satai's distress, Kegama relented, but not before imparting a vital piece of information. "Listen well, O pious one, Manruru. the pure, son of Prametai, appears. You shall be delivered from this curse the moment you behold him. Sata's eyes widened as he grasped the truth. He was indeed Ruru, and the son of Prametai, overwhelmed with emotion. He awaited his transformation back to his original form, as if sensing Sata's turmoil. Kegama's words continued, "When you regain your native form, I shall reveal something for your benefit." And so it came to pass. With a burst of radiance, the snake body shed its skin, and Satai stood before Kegama in his true form. The ascetic smiled, his eyes aglow with wisdom. "O thou first of created beings," he began, "the highest virtue of man is sparing the life of others. A Brahmana should never take the life of any creature. Instead, he should be mild and benevolent to all." Kegama's words flowed like a river, imparting ancient truths from the Vedas. He spoke of the sacred duties of a Brahmana, to inspire faith in God, to retain the Vedas in his memory, and to embody truthfulness, forgiveness, and compassion. As Satai listened with rapt attention, Kegama revealed that these virtues were not only essential. In a lush forest, Ruru sat at the feet of Satai, a sage who had been recounting tales. For days, the young Ruru's eyes sparkled with curiosity as he asked Satai, why was King Janimjaya bent on destroying all serpents, and how were they saved by the wise Astika? His voice trembled with anticipation, and Satai smiled knowingly. The sage leaned forward, his eyes twinkling like stars. "Ruru, this is a tale of great import." He began, "a story that will reveal to you the intricacies of fate and the power of wisdom." With a wave of his hand, Risha Satai vanished into thin air. Leaving Ruru bewildered, the young prince searched far and wide for the sage, scouring every nook and cranny of the forest. But Satai was nowhere to be found as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the landscape. Ruru's fatigue grew. He collapsed on the ground, his mind reeling with questions. What had Satai mean by the important history of Astika? Why had he vanished so suddenly? As Ruru regained consciousness, he stumbled back home, his heart heavy with confusion. His father, a wise and venerable sage in his own right, saw the worry etched on Ruru's face. "What troubles you, my son?" he asked gently. Ruru recounted Satai's words, and his father listened intently with a nod. The elder sage began to speak, his voice weaving a spell of enchantment around Ruru. Long ago, in the great kingdom of Astakura, King Janimjaya had vowed to destroy all serpents as penance for a grave mistake. His priests and sages had advised him on this path. But Astika, a wise serpent sage, knew that such an act would bring ruin upon the world. The elder sage's words painted vivid pictures in Ruru's mind. The mighty King Janimjaya, his fierce determination to carry out his vow. The wise Astika, who saw through the king's error and chose to intervene. As the story unfolded, Ruru felt himself becoming one with the tale, his heart swelling with emotion. "What about Astika?" Ruru asked, his voice barely above a whisper. His father smiled knowingly. "Patience, my son," he said. "The tale is not yet told. Let me finish." And so Ruru listened entranced as the story of Astika and King Janimjaya unfolded like a rich tapestry woven from threads of fate, wisdom, and sacrifice. The night wore on, the stars twinkling above. Ruru's eyes grew heavy with sleep, but his mind remained awake, still reeling from the tale's impact. He knew that in the sacred land of ancient India, a young prince named Janimjaya, renowned for his bravery and strength, had grown tired of the world's fleeting pleasures. He sought to rid himself of what he saw as a threat to his kingdom, the snakes that slithered through its grasslands. The king consulted with his wise men, who devised a plan to vanquish the serpents. Through a grand sacrifice, a sacred ritual was set in motion, and a massive pyre was constructed to burn the snakes alive. But amidst the chaos, a young ascetic named Astika, son of Jarakuru, sensed the injustice being perpetrated against his kin. He had been born into a family of great spiritual power, with ancestors who were renowned for their wisdom and devotion. Jarakuru, Astika's father, was a wise and powerful sage who had spent his life in austere devotions. One day, while wandering the earth, he chanced upon his ancestors hanging upside down from a hole in the ground. They told him that they were rishis of rigid vows known as Yavaras, who had been cursed to remain suspended until their lineage was extended through a son. Moved by their plight, Jarakuru vowed to beget a child and thus save his ancestors' souls. He set out on a quest for a bride, determined to fulfill his promise to his sires. As he traveled the world, he encountered many who were willing to offer him their daughters as charity. but none with the same name as himself. Undeterred, Jerackru accepted an offer from a poor family to take their daughter Astika's mother as his wife. Together they had a son named Astika, who would grow up to be a great sage in his own right. As Jerackru raised his son, he taught him the importance of compassion and the value of life years past, and Janamjaya's sacrifice was underway. The snakes were being led to the pyre, and the flames were about to engulf them. That is when Astika, moved by the suffering of his kin, intervened, using his spiritual powers to calm the king and persuade him to spare the lives of the serpents. The story of Astika's bravery and devotion was passed down through generations, serving as a testament to the power of compassion and the importance of preserving life. Even today, it is remembered as a shining example of the triumph of good over evil and the enduring legacy of those who strive for justice and mercy in this world. In a world where spiritual seekers roam the earth, seeking enlightenment and companionship, there lived a Brahmana named Jerackru. He was a man of unwavering vows, dedicated to his faith and tradition. Yet despite his devotion, he wandered the land in search of a wife. But fate seemed to have other plans. As the sun began to sound another day, Jerackru ventured into the forest, seeking solace in nature's tranquility. His mind wandered back to the words of his ancestors, who had imparted ancient wisdom and teachings that guided him through life's trials. With a faint voice, he recited the sacred prayers 3 times, imploring the universe for a suitable bride. The forest was alive with the whispers of ancient secrets, and it was here that Vesakai, the mighty serpent, rose from his slumber. The wise creature offered his sister as a gift to Jerackru, but the Brahmana hesitated. He thought within himself, "I will not accept her as my wife unless she bears the same name as mine." This unyielding resolve was rooted in his deep reverence for tradition and the sacred ties of kinship. Vesakai, sensing Jerackru's hesitation, approached him with gentle respect. The serpent's voice was like a soothing melody. "O Jerackru, tell me truly, what is the name of your sister?" Jerackru replied, his words laced with sincerity. "My sister is called Jerackru, and I will not accept her as my wife unless she shares." This sacred name. Vesakai's expression was a blend of compassion and understanding. He gazed at Jerackru with eyes that seemed to hold the weight of eternity. "O best of Brahmanas, for you I reserved my beautiful sister. Take her and let our lineage be united through the bonds of marriage." With these words, Vesakai offered his sister's hand in marriage, and Jerackru, moved by the serpent's selfless gesture, accepted her with ordained rites. As they exchanged vows, the forest seemed to come alive with the whispers of ancient secrets. The trees swayed gently, their leaves rustling in approval, as if witnessing a union that transcended mortal bonds. In this sacred moment, Jerackru and his new wife, also named Jerackru, were bound together by threads of tradition, love, and mutual respect. Thus began a new chapter in the life of Jerackru, one filled with the promise of companionship and spiritual growth. As he looked into the eyes of his bride, he knew that their union was not just a marriage, but a celebration of the sacred ties that connected them to their ancestors and the natural world. In this way, the story of Jerackru and Vesakai's sister became a testament to the power of tradition, selflessness, and the enduring bonds of. In the ancient land of Bharata, where the sacred rivers flowed and the mountains towered high, a tale of devotion and sacrifice unfolded. Sahai, a revered sage, began to recount the story of the great Rishi Jerackru, who was destined for greatness. It was said that the mother of the snakes had once cursed them, declaring that they would be consumed by fire. During Janamjaya's grand sacrifice to counter this fate, the chief of the snakes, a wise and noble being, took a bold step. He married his sister to the illustrious Rishi Jerackru, who was renowned for his exceptional vows and adherence to the sacred scriptures. The marriage was performed with great pomp and ceremony as ordained by the ancient texts. From this union, a magnificent son named Astika was born. This young sage was blessed with an even temperament, compassion, and wisdom beyond his years. He spent his days studying the Vedas and their branches, mastering the intricacies of the sacred knowledge. As he grew in understanding and devotion, he became a beacon of hope for all those who knew him. Years passed, and Janamjaya, a king from the Pandava lineage, announced his intention to perform the grand snake sacrifice. The sacrifice was said to be so potent that it would destroy all the snakes in the land. When Astika learned of this plan, he knew he had to act swiftly with unwavering determination. He set out to rescue his brother's maternal uncles and the countless other serpents who were doomed to perish as the flames of the sacrifice threatened to engulf them. Astika intervened with his extraordinary powers. He freed the snakes from the jaws of death, saving them from a fiery fate. But that was not all. He also bequeathed offspring upon his parents, thus ensuring their lineage and legacy continued through his intense austerities, vows, and study of the Vedas. Astika freed himself from the burdens of his past deeds as the years went by. Jaraktaru's debt to his ancestors was finally discharged. With their bond broken, they ascended to the realm of heaven, leaving Astika behind, though he had accomplished great things. Jaraktaru knew that his time on earth had come to an end. He departed for the afterlife, leaving behind the legacy of devotion and selflessness. Sata's tale came full circle as he concluded the story of Astika, a hero whose life was marked by courage, compassion, and wisdom, and so with reverence Sata turned to his audience, seeking to know what other tales they would like him to share. The assembly fell silent, their minds filled with wonder at the epic story of Astika, a shining example of devotion in the ancient land of Bharat. In a lush forest, where the gentle rustle of leaves and the sweet songs of birds filled the air, Sonika sat with Sata, eager to hear another tale from the revered sage. O Sata, Sonika said, his eyes shining with curiosity, relate once more in detail this his story of the learned and virtuous Astika. Our interest is great. Sata's smile was like a warm breeze on a summer day as he began to wave a tale that would transport them to a bygone era, the golden age, when the sun shone bright and the world was young. Prajapati had two daughters, Kedru and Vena. These two sisters were as radiant as the morning star, their beauty captivating all who laid eyes on them. They married Kasyapa, a sage renowned for his wisdom, and he was overjoyed to be surrounded by such loveliness. As they basked in the warmth of their love, Kasyapa offered each wife a boon, a gift from the gods themselves. Kedru's heart swelled with longing as she thought of her future children. I wish for 1,000 sons, she said, her voice like music, all equal in splendor and strength. Bened, to have vision of her offspring, 2 sons who would surpass even Kedru's 1,000 in prowess, and sighs. Kasyapa, pleased with their wishes, granted them both boons. The sisters rejoiced, knowing that their dreams were within reach as the years past. Kedru's womb ripened with the promise of 1,000 snakes, each one a miniature replica of its mother Veneta. 2 carried her 2 sons, but they seemed to be taking their sweet time to develop. The sisters' maidservants carefully tended to the eggs, keeping them warm and safe. But as the seasons changed, Kedru's eggs burst open, releasing 1,000 snakes into the world. Meanwhile, Veneta grew impatient. She had waited for 500 years, but still her twins did not emerge. In a fit of jealousy, she broke one of the eggs, hoping to hasten their birth. But this act would change the course of his story. Forever an embryo with only its upper part developed and its lower part still forming looked up at Veneta with anger in its eye. Since you have prematurely broken this date, it said, you will serve as a slave. The child rose into the sky, becoming the charioteer of Surya, the sun god. From that day on he rode across the heavens each morning, his presence a reminder to all of Veneta's impatience. 500 years passed, and still the second egg remained sealed. But when it finally burst open, out came Garuda, the serpent-eater, the lord of birds. With wings outstretched, he soared into them. In the realm of the divine, a majestic steed named Achkaisravas emerged from the depths of the Unseen. This resplendent creature, a masterpiece of creation, was said to possess an irresistible vigor and every auspicious mark. The 2 sisters, witnesses to this wondrous sight, beheld Achkaisravas with awe and reverence. They watched. Sata began to recount the tale of how Achkaisravas came into being. It is said, he started that on the sacred mountain Meru a conclave of gods was convened, the celestial assembly comprising beings who had practiced rigorous penances and observed noble vows, sought to acquire Amrita, the elixir of immortality. The peak of Meru shone with an otherworldly radiance, its golden hue illuminated by the dispersing rays of the sun. The mountain's grandeur was awe-inspiring, adorned as it was with precious gems and divine, life-giving herbs. Its slopes echoed with the enchanting melodies of winged shores, while treacherous beasts roamed its breast. As Sata continued his tale, he revealed that Narayana, a sage of great wisdom, had proposed an extraordinary plan to the celestial assembly. The gods, Sata said, were urged by Narayana to churn the Unseen with the Asuras, the demons, by doing so they would not only obtain Amrita, but also discover all manner of precious gems and elixirs. With a sense of purpose, the gods began to prepare for this monumental task. They knew that it would require immense strength and cooperation between the divine and the demonic forces, as Sada's words painted the scene. One could almost imagine the celestial assembly gathered around Naranina, their faces set with determination. The stage was now set for a grand adventure, an epic endeavor that would test the resolve of even the gods themselves. At Caesarevus, the majestic steed stood as a testament to the wonders that lay ahead, its very presence imbuing the tale with an era of magic. And always sought as narrative unfolded, one could sense the anticipation building within the hearts of the listeners. Sonika and his companions, they were about to embark on a journey through time and space guided by the sage's words, which would reveal the secrets of the divine and the mysteries hidden within the ancient lore in this sacred tale. The boundaries between reality and myth blurred, inviting all who listened to step into a realm where gods and mortals walk together.
In the realm of the gods, a majestic mountain named Mandara stood tall, its cloud-like peaks stretching towards the heavens. The mountain was adorned with intertwining herbs and teeming with life. Countless birds poured forth their melodies, while beasts of prey roamed about. It was a place where the gods Apsaras and Kinnaris will often visit. One day the gods gathered to discuss a pressing matter. They wanted to use Mandara as a churning rod to extract the elixir of immortality from the Essene of milk. However, they were unable to dislodge the mountain on their own. Frustrated, they turned to Vishu and Brahman, who sat together in contemplation. Vishu, with his lotus eyes, agreed to help the gods. He directed Ananta, the mighty serpent, to tear up the mountain along with its woods, and denizens. The powerful Ananta obeyed, and the gods came before the Essene, requesting their assistance in churning the waters. For Amrita, Essene, aware of the immense effort required, agreed to cooperate, but insisted on a share of the elixir. The gods then approached the Tortoise King, who graciously offered his back as a platform for the mountain. Indra cleverly placed Mandara on the tortoise's back, and the Asuras took hold of Vasuki, the serpent, as the churning core. The churning began with Ananta raising and lowering Vasuki's hood at intervals. The struggle was immense, and black vapors with flames issued from Vasuki's mouth. These clouds, charged with lightning, poured showers that refreshed the tired gods. Flowers also fell from the trees on the whirling Mandara, reviving the celestial sis. The churning continued. A tremendous roar echoed through the Essene, signaling the death of many aquatic animals and creatures from the lower realms. Large trees were torn up by their roots and fell into the water, creating fires that blazed up frequently. The mountain resembled a dark cloud charged with lightning, and the fire spread, consuming lions, elephants, and other creatures. Indra eventually extinguished the flames with heavy showers. After some time, gamma exudations from various trees and herbs mingled with the Essene's waters, granting immortality to the gods who drank from it. The milky water of the agitated deep turned into clarified butter by virtue of those gums and juices. However, nectar had yet to appear, leaving the gods exhausted and without strength to continue churning. Brahman, seated on his seat, was approached by the gods, who begged for Narayana's assistance in granting them renewed strength. Narayana agreed, saying, "I grant you sufficient strength. Go put the mountain in position again, and churn the water." Re-established with newfound vigor, the gods recommenced churning. As they worked, various treasures emerged.
In the midst of a great battle, the gods were at their wits' end. The Deities and Danavas, equipped with powerful armor and weapons, had launched a fierce attack on the divine forces. But just as all seemed lost, Lord Vishu appeared in his enchanting female form, accompanied by Nara. Together, they devised a plan to deceive the mighty Danavas and steal the Amrita from their grasp. With cunning and stealth, the dew succeeded in snatching the nectar from the hands of the Danavas. The gods, who had been drinking it with delight, were overjoyed at this turn of events. However, a Danava named Rao had managed to disguise himself as one of the gods and was also partaking of the Amrita. It wasn't until Surya and Sama recognized him that they alerted the other gods instantly. Lord Vishu, in his true form, sprang into action with his discus Sudarsana. He swiftly beheaded Rao, sending his head soaring into the sky. The Danava's body crashed to the ground, causing the earth to tremble with its massive impact. From that day on, a long-standing enmity developed between Ra's head and Surya, and some battle raged on with Lord Vishu and Nara. Joining forces against the Asuras, the gods fought valiantly. But the Danavas were relentless in their assault. Mountains of rocks and trees came crashing down from the sky, threatening to end off the divine forces. It seemed as though red mountain peaks lay scattered across the battlefield just when it seemed that all was lost. Nara and Narayana entered the fray. Lord Vishisdiscus Sursana blazed with a fire slight, destroying thousands of Danavas in its path. The air was filled with cries of distress. As warriors clashed with iron missiles, fists, and swords, the earth shook beneath their feet as mountains crashed to the ground. The battle reached its climax when Nara and Narayana unleashed their full fury upon the azure Sudarsana like a blazing fire that consumes all things. At the end of Yuga tore through the Danavas with devastating force. The gods fought bravely. But it was Lord Vishnu's discus that proved to be the deciding factor in their victory. In the aftermath of the battle, the gods offered due respect to Mandara and restored him to his rightful place. They celebrated their triumph by offering prayers and hymns, filling the heavens with their joyful shouts. Indra and the other deities approached Lord Vishnu, presenting him with the vessel of Amrita for safekeeping, and so the great battle between the gods and Asuras came to an end with Lord Vishnu emerging victorious once more. His divine power and cunning had saved the day, ensuring the continued. In the realm of ancient tales, Satai, a skilled storyteller, sat before his audience, eager to share another enchanting story from the annals of time. Listen well, he began, for I shall recount the tale of how Amrita, the divine elixir, was churned from the vast expanse of the Aegean. As Satai spoke, his words transported his listeners to a bygone era. In those days, two sisters, Vainata and Kedru, were known for their wit and cunning. Their conversation turned to the majestic horse Kesravas, whose beauty and prowess had captured the hearts of all who beheld it. Tell me, amiable sister, Kedru asked Vainata, what color is this magnificent steed? Vainata's smile was radiant as she replied, Kesravas is certainly white. The two sisters exchanged a mischievous glance, and their conversation turned to wagering on the horse's true color. I think it's black in its tail, Kedru said with a sleek grin. Let us lay a bet upon it, dear Vainata. May the one who loses become. The other slave sisters parted ways, each determined to prove her guess correct. The next day they returned to the stables, where Kesravas was kept. But Kedru had devised a plan to deceive her sister. She summoned her 1,000 serpent sons and ordered them to transform into black hair, covering the horse's tail in darkness. However, her snakes refused to obey their mother's command, and she cursed them with angers, saying, during the snake sacrifice of King Janamejaya, I shall consume you. All the grandsire Brahma himself heard Kedru's cruel curse, and moved by compassion for his creatures, sanctioned it along with the gods. As the snakes multiplied their virulent poison and strength became a threat to all living beings, fate decreed that those who sought the death of others would meet their own demise. The gods supported Kedru's action, seeing it as necessary for the greater good. Brahma summoned Kasyapa, the father of the serpents, and comforted him, saying, O pure one who overcomes all enemies, do not grieve for your son's fate, their destruction. And the snake sacrifice was ordained long ago. With these words, the divine creator imparted to Kasyapa the knowledge of neutralizing poison, offering solace amidst the sorrow. Thus Satai's tale came to an end, weaving a narrative that would be etched in the hearts of his listeners forever. In this ancient story, we find the testament to the intricate web of fate and the delicate balance between life and death. As the storyteller concluded his account, the audience was left to ponder the mysteries of the universe, where even as the night gave way to morning, the two sisters, Kedru and Vainata, set out with a sense of urgency and impatience. They were on a mission to see the majestic steed of Kesravas up close, but their journey was not without its own challenges. The sisters had made a wager about slavery, and only by witnessing this wondrous creature could they settle their dispute. As they walked, the vast expanse of the Aegean unfolded before them. Its waters stretched out as far as the eye could see, rolling and roaring with a deafening sound that echoed through the air. The sisters felt small in comparison to its enormity, yet drawn to its majestic presence, they marveled at the sheer number of fish swimming within its depths, some so large they could swallow a whole Aegean's waters, teemed with life, from ichors and creatures of various forms to tortoises and crocodiles. The air was thick with the sounds of aquatic animals, their roars and chirps filling the air like a cacophony of music. As the sisters gazed out at this incredible sight, they couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and reverence for the Essene's power. As they drew closer to the shore, they noticed the way the winds from its shores seemed to dance across the surface of the water, creating waves that rose high into the air. The moon's influence was evident in the swelling billows, as if the very tides themselves were being stirred by some unseen force. The sisters felt a shiver run down their spines as they realized the Essene's waters had been disturbed before, even by the mighty Lord Govinda, who had once taken on the form of a wild boar to raise the submerged earth. Their gaze fell upon the depths of the Essene, where the regenerate Rishayatri had attempted to fathom its secrets, but failed after 100 years. It was said that even the great deity Vishnu rested in this vast expanse during his Yoganivra, a deep sleep under the spell of spiritual meditation. The sisters felt humbled by the realization that they were but tiny creatures compared to the majesty of the Essenes. They stood there. The sisters saw mighty rivers falling into the Essene like amorous competitors, each eager to meet its waters. They watched in awe as the Essene's waves danced and swirled, always full and always moving with an energy that seemed boundless. The sounds of aquatic creatures filled the air, a constant reminder of the Essene's power and majesty. The sisters stood there for a moment, taking in the sheer scale of this incredible sight. They felt small, yet connected to something greater than themselves, as if they were part of a larger tapestry that stretched out across the universe. And as they gazed upon the Essene's vast expanse, they knew that their journey had been worth it, for in witnessing its beauty and power.
In a distant era, the natives, a serpent-like species, dwelled within the vast expanse of the Essene. Their mother, Vineta's sister, Kedru, had been wronged by her sibling, and she sought revenge through a clever wager. The two sisters, daughters of Dacia, were known for their cunning and wit. As they strolled along the sky, gazing out at the endless blue waters below, they chanced upon the Essene in all its fury. The wind whipped up massive waves that threatened to engulf even the most resilient creatures. Schools of gargantuan fish swam alongside walls, while Macarus, half-snake, half-fish monstrosities lurked beneath the surface. As sisters marveled at the diversity of life within the Essene's depths, they beheld the eerie glow of subterranean fires that illuminated the darkness, and the majestic presence of Varuna, the water god who ruled over this vast expanse. The Nagas too made their home here, dwelling in wondrous habitats amidst the coral reefs. As Kedru and Vineta gazed upon the Essene's wonders, they hatched a plan to exact revenge on their sister. They would challenge her to a wager, one that would test her wit and cunning, and so, with a mischievous glint in their eyes, they set out to deceive the natives, convincing them to transform into hares within the tail of a majestic horse. The natives, bound by filial duty, reluctantly agreed to their mother's bidding. They slithered into the horse tail, transforming themselves into individual strands of hair. Little did they know that this act would set in motion a chain of events that would change the course of their lives forever. Meanwhile, the two sisters continued on their journey, lost in conversation and laughter as they strolled along the sky. Their banter was laced with a subtle malice, for they knew that their wager would soon be revealed to the world, and when it was only time would tell who emerged victorious, Vineta or her cunning sister Kedru. As the sisters vanished into the horizon, and the Essene continued its eternal dance, rolling waves crashing against the shore. The Nagas, now transformed within the horse tail, waited patiently for their fight to be sealed. The stage was set for a drama of epic proportions, one that would test the limits of family loyalty and sibling rivalry. In the vast expanse of the universe, Kedru, a swift and determined being, accompanied by Vinet, her devoted companion, soared across the Essene. As they alighted near a majestic horse with a coat as white as the moon's rays and a tail adorned with black hairs, Kedru's eyes gleamed with triumph, for in this very moment she had won the wager against Vineta, and her rival was now bound to serve her. Vineta, overcome with sorrow and despair, fell into slavery under Kedru's stern rule. Her heart heavy with grief, she could hardly bear the thought of being separated from her beloved child, yet to be born. And so, as the days passed, Vineta waited anxiously for the birth of her son, hoping against hope that he would bring her freedom and joy. Finally, the moment arrived when Garuda, the mighty bird, burst forth from his egg without the aid of his mother. Radiant with splendor, his eyes blazing like lightning flashes, he illuminated the universe with his very presence. As he grew in size and strength, His body ascended to the skies, filling all who beheld him with awe. Gods, themselves witnessing Garuda's arrival, trembled with fear. They sought the protection of Vivavasu, the deity of fire, who sat on his throne, the blazing heap of flames surrounding him. The gods bowed down before Agni and pleaded with him to restrain his power, lest it consume them all. Agni, however, revealed that Garuda was not a threat, but rather a mighty being born to promote the joy of Vainata. He was the son of Kashyapa, a destroyer of serpents and an ally of the gods against the deities. And Rakshasas. Agni invited the gods to come closer and behold Garuda's splendor. The gods, their fear subsiding, approached Garuda with reverence and adoration. They invoked him by many names: Rishi, destroyer of all, creator of all; Hirane, Garva, progenitor of creation; Indra, Bhairava, Vishu, and the Lord of the universe. They praised his power, his wisdom, and his benevolencies. They worshipped Garuda. Their words flowed like a river, extolling his virtues and seeking his protection. O resplendent one, they said, thou art the destroyer of all, yet the creator of all. Thou art the very essence of life, the energy of the sun, the intellectual functions, and our great protector. Thou art the Essene of holiness, purity, birth of darkness, and the possessor of the 6 high attributes. Moved by their devotion, Garuda reduced his own energy and splendor, calming the fears of the gods and restoring balance to the universe. And thus, in this moment of divine connection, the cosmos.
In the realm of the gods, a tale of great import unfolded, one that would decide the fate of worlds to come. Began with Rahu, a serpent-like being who had once been pointed out as an impostor among the gods during the cheering of the Essene, Surya, the radiant sun god, and some, the moon god, had identified Rahu's true nature, and from that moment on he harbored a deep-seated enmity towards them. As the years passed, Rahu's resentment simmered until one day he resolved to exact his revenge. He would devour the sun god who had wronged him so grievously. With this dark intent, Rahu set out for the western mountains, where Surya dwelled. The very thought of being consumed by his afflictor filled the gods with terror. Meanwhile, on the other side of the great Essene, Garuda, a majestic bird with radiant feathers, stood before his father's home. He was a creature of immense power and energy, capable of traversing vast distances in an instant. With Aruna, his brother, perched upon his back, Garuda began to make his way towards their mother's Sirius. They crossed the Essene. Surya, still seething with anger, rose from the western mountains, determined to bring about the destruction of the worlds. His fierce rays blazed forth, casting a golden glow over the landscape. The gods and great rishis trembled at the sight, for they knew that if Surya were allowed to continue unchecked, all would be reduced to ashes. The grandsire, Brahma, was summoned by the gods, who sought his counsel in this dire hour. O Lord, they pleaded, what is the cause of this great heat? Why does it threaten our very existence? Brahma revealed that Surya had indeed resolved to burn all to cinders, but he, the grandsire, had foreseen this calamity and provided the Aruna. The son of Kashyapa was chosen for this noble task. This mighty being, with his colossal form and radiant splendor, would stand before Surya as his charioteer, absorbing all the sun god's energy and preventing him from unleashing his full fury upon the worlds. And so Aruna set out to fulfill his duty, even as Garuda continued on his way, bearing his brother towards their mother Siddhis. The story unfolded. Satai, a wise sage, recounted the tale of Rahu's revenge and the salvation brought about by Aruna. He revealed how the gods had been saved from destruction, thanks to the intervention of the grandsire and the selfless act of Aruna, and thus the fate of worlds was forever changed, as the balance between light and darkness was maintained by the noble deeds of these celestial beings. As the sun rose over the vast expanse of the great Essene, Sata's words brought to life a tale of sorrow and struggle. Vainata, a mother of Garuda, the majestic bird with strength and energy to rival the gods, found herself in a state of affliction on the other shore of the mighty sea. Defeated in a wager and reduced to slavery, she lived a life of hardship. Kadru, the mother of the snakes, gazed upon Vainata's prostrate form and spoke words that would change the course of their fate. Vainata, dear one, she said, addressing her with gentle compassion, there is a realm in the midst of the Essene, hidden from mortal eyes, where the Nagas dwell. Bear me there, that I may find solace among my own kind. Vainata's shoulders bore the weight of Kedru's words as she carried her mother-in-law across The waves Garuda, with his wings spread wide, soared into the skies to fetch the snakes. As he flew, the radiant sun beat down upon them, scorching their scales and causing them to swoon away in its blinding light. Planeta watched in anguish as her sons succumbed to the heat, their bodies racked by the unforgiving rays of the solar. Didikidru, witnessing her children's distress, turned to Indra, the lord of the gods, with a plea. For Ed, great Indra, she implored, "We beseech you, mighty one, to shield our sons from this burning heat by your showers. We beg of you, bring us relief from this scorching sun." Her words poured forth like a river, a litany of devotion and supplication as Kedru prayed. Her voice rose to the heavens, echoing through the realms of the gods. She invoked Indra's many names: slayer of Vritra, destroyer of Nemochai, consort of Sachai, and wielder of the thousand eyes. Her words wove a tapestry of praise, weaving together the threads of creation and destruction. Indra, moved by Kidru's devotion, responded to her plea.